Hey, welcome to the BK Show podcast. We're back after taking off Christmas week and New Year's week. We're back with fresh content for you. I'm sure you missed me. I know I missed you guys. I'm happy to be back. Today is a special episode with my friend Brian Angel, who was also on episode number 2. Brian and I were partners at the time we recorded episode number 2 in Standing Destination and InMovement.com. We talk all about Brian's journey, and we talk all about where we were going and how our partnership worked. And today, Brian wanted to come back on the show and talk about how our partnership has ended. Brian and I are far more friends than we are business partners. We talk far more baseball than we do business, and I think both of us would rather have it that way. And I think Brian really wants to go a different direction in his life, as you'll see in this episode. And so Brian wanted to come on and share the ups and downs of our partnership and the ups and downs, and specifically downs, of one of the two businesses that we had. And he was passionate about it. He said, look, I'm tired of hearing everyone killing it or crushing it. I want to come on and talk about things that don't work. And I said, yeah, buddy, come on. Let's chat about this. So today's episode's a little bit different. I think you're going to enjoy it. If you haven't listened to episode number 2, I would highly recommend go back and listen to episode number 2 first, and then listen to this episode. It'll give you a little bit of context of what we're talking about. But I think you'll enjoy today's episode, and I'd love your feedback either way. You can reach out to Brian. You can reach out to me. Just curious what you thought of this type of episode, as it's a little different than anything we've done before, but I think there's a ton of value in here, and I hope you enjoy it. Real quick, if you've been anxiously waiting for 2 weeks for me to come back to do another BK Show episode, I would love for you to take 2 seconds and go in your Apple Podcast app right now, or Spotify, or wherever you are, and leave a review for the podcast. It really does help. And if you have a chance, share it with somebody you know. Share it with somebody you think would enjoy this podcast. I would appreciate it very, very much. But without further ado, let's have round number 2 with Brian Angel. Brian Angel, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me back.
You are officially the first person to come back more than one time, so congratulations. Brian was on episode number 2 of the podcast, where I listened to it earlier today to kind of prep here, and wow, I was rusty in the podcast game. It had been a while. It shows in that episode. I had a lot of ums and ahs, but it was good. I think it was really good telling your story. It was 2 hours long, but I think it was a lot of nuggets in there, and so I'm excited to have you back and kind of refresh the listener on where we are now, and there's been quite a few updates, so I'm excited to have you back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It sounds like a drinking game. Every time I clear my throat, or every time you say or somebody take a drink.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. You asked me right before the call, why'd you cringe? And I'm like, it was bad. I don't know. Maybe it's just me judging myself. But I don't know. It was good. There's a lot of nuggets in there, but there was a lot of stumbling and bumbling around as well.
Yeah, but that's real, right? That's how we talk.
Yeah, but I'm supposed to edit that stuff out, right? Like one of my old podcasts, I knew just by the sound waves in Audacity what an was. And so I could pull out the ums without actually listening to anything. I just saw how often I said I think everybody has that word that they fall back to, right, or like, or whatever it is. Mine's definitely
See, I think my problem is euphemisms. I'll use the same euphemisms over and over and over again. So anybody that's listening, shoot me a message and let me know what my nervous tics are when I talk too much.
Well, if you haven't listened to episode 2, definitely go listen to that. Learn Brian's whole story. Just a quick summarization. Brian and I went to Traffic and Conversion Summit. And I knew of Brian from the community we came up in, and I think he knew of me, but I don't think we had ever really met. And so we saw we were both going. We kind of got together, and we were buddies for the 3-4 days. We, ate at the same Mexican restaurant like every single night we were there. And then, just kind of went to sessions together and kind of bonded there. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, we became partners on a couple of businesses that we're going to talk about today. And so the purpose of today's episode, we're parting ways, or we have parted ways. Actually, the contracts are already signed. And so there was an opportunity for, number one, me to be transparent about my life. This is the BK Show, but also to really try to provide value to the listener of why the partnership has ended, what it looked like in the first place, some of the pros and cons of being in a partnership, the ups and downs of the businesses we were part of. I think Brian really wants to hit on some downs for some of you guys, which I appreciate very, very much. It's often too rosy in the podcast world, and I'd love to show you some thorns.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I was excited about this because I've listened, you and I both, you consume more podcasts than I do. And you reach this saturation point where you get tired of hearing all these all these success stories and people telling you, this hack or that tactic that works really well. And I feel like there's a lack of real conversation about things that go wrong, things that go south, hard things that happen in business. And while I don't think, I wouldn't say that our relationship has gone south in any way. Certainly, it's interesting. It's interesting fodder to discuss why we decided to part ways as partner, but also some of the things that happened, particularly with one of our businesses that led to some hardships and took us down this road. So I'm kind of excited to open up about it. I feel like it's sort of been building up inside of me, and I've wanted to talk about it for a while, and I'm excited to have this, this platform to share it with people.
Well, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, we could start what did it even look like? Like when we came together, what did that look like? Like, obviously you had seen that I was working with a couple mutual friends of ours, and we were growing rather quickly. But I think people want to hear dirty details, Brian. So what did that even look like? How did we even begin the process of like valuing your company and deciding, hey, Ben wants to come in? What does that even look like?
Well, first thing is you picked at me for a few months and kept saying, when are you going to give me part of your business? When are you going to give me a piece of your business? So that traffic and conversion summit was in, I want to say it was February of 2018. And by August, we had essentially agreed to become partners. But I actually remember, I don't remember if we've talked about this before, but I remember there being one specific moment where things kind of sparked on my end. So after Traffic and Conversion Summit, you and I stayed in touch for a while. You actually helped me with a few things. I remember at one point you offered to just to go into some of our coding on the back end of Shopify and help us with some of the way we had our links set up and our URL structures, and actually that helped quite a bit with some of our organic traffic, actually pretty quickly. And I remember vividly that at the time I was in Washington. I don't know if you remember, I took that month-long trip with my family to Washington. I was still working, but kind of working part-time. And at that point, Standing Destination, which was our only business, was flourishing. I mean, it was easily doing 7 figures a year, and net profits were relatively high, and frankly, we were in cruise control. And I remember it was the day after, I believe, that we got back from Washington. I received a frantic call from from our biggest supplier. At that point, that supplier was about 40 to 45% of our business. And they basically sent me an email saying, you have to stop all your advertising. You can't list our products anymore. Which probably accounted for paid advertising, probably accounted for about 80% of that. So let's just call that a major. It was probably 30 to 35% of our business was incoming from paid ads on this one specific supplier. And suddenly I get a call from them saying, the owner is mad. He doesn't like that you're advertising this stuff, and he wants you to shut off all ads. And so I sort of had this panic moment that a huge portion of my business was, could potentially go away tomorrow. And I started extrapolating that, this was going to be a major blow to my family, because frankly, this was our sole source of income at that time. And so I remember I was at a breakfast restaurant with my wife and kids when it happened. And I was outside on the phone trying to fix this problem, missing half of breakfast in the process. And on the way home was when I talked to Allie, my wife, and said, look, I think this is a pretty clear sign that we're just too reliant on paid traffic. I want to offer Ben partnership so that he can help us, shift, help us put a greater emphasis on SEO and, acquire more organic customers, just to sort of, create some balance with all this paid traffic that had been easy up until that point, but suddenly it clearly had some warts on it. So I remember that day vividly. It was a moment of panic, but it was also a moment of clarity that, we needed to diversify our traffic sources to make ourselves healthier over the long haul.
Well, I remember you taking that trip. I don't specifically remember that happening with the supplier when you contact or when you reached out to me and I guess gave in to my will, right? You said I was pestering you, which sounds like me. I definitely am a pesterer. I probably helped you with something and then, made a sly comment of like, you could have me around to help more often.
Yeah. I don't mean pester in a bad way, but you love to, you just keep sort of offering suggestions over and over and over again. And it works. What can I say?
The thing is, like, I came in, like you just said, on a, to bring some SEO help, right? And just, fast forwarding a little bit, boy, was like some niches, some areas are hard, like really hard. So I've been part of certain businesses and I've consulted with others where a couple levers pulled, just like fixing your technical SEO, your on-page SEO, and maybe getting a couple links that, like the easy links that are out there that everybody, should get in their industry, made a massive difference. And I remember like, coming into Standing Destination and trying to pull these levers. And while we had some wins, and I'm actually, on the other screen still logging in here. By the way, you haven't changed your password. Logging into our account to kind of see the ebbs and flows of that. And like, I see some wins in here, but it's not the crazy hockey stick that I've experienced in other businesses. And so it's funny that like, that was your main driver for bringing me in. Well, I think we did a lot of other fun stuff as well, or tried.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question that was the primary focus, right? Like you remember, we essentially, it took us a little bit of time to negotiate the original deal. And originally I think I offered you 5% and you countered and said, let's do 10. And we did like a discounted rate. And so by the end of August, we had you basically set up as a partner. And in September, you were here in Fort Collins. And if you remember, we sat down, we literally booked a room at a hotel, a meeting room, and went through this whole massive project that we had planned for building out collection pages and basically, applying various strategies to basically to grab all the low hanging fruit that we thought was out there for Standing Destination. What we didn't, or at least I think what we underestimated was the level of competition in that space. And I think, as I've thought about it in hindsight, one of the things that was interesting about our niche, because it's not like other niches lack competition, right? There's always some big players, whether they're, affiliate content sites or other e-commerce sites and things like that you have to compete with. But one of the interesting things that I think we were dealing with in the standing desk space is that companies or publishers like Inc. magazine and New York Times and CNN and major health sites, everybody was weighing in about standing desks, whether it's, their annual, best lists, top 5, top 10 standing desks or why standing desks work, why standing desks don't work. And I think maybe there was so much noise there that we just underestimated because we were thinking, strictly from a direct competitor standpoint and thought we could easily, move our way up onto the first page for a lot of these terms we targeted in the early days.
Yeah, a couple of points there. So I do remember you like wanted to give me 5%. You were like, just take 5, come in here and do that. And I was like, well, how about I buy 5? And then if you want to chuck 5 on top, like that would give me, 10 would give me a little more incentive to show up more often, right? But I do remember us sitting in that hotel room and like working through the same process I work through with consulting clients, which is so much easier, by the way, in person. Like being able to sit there and just in 2 days go through everything and knock that out. I remember, having some of those small wins, right? Like just getting your technical SEO, your on-page SEO, getting your URLs correct. I think we removed almost 1/3 of the website that just didn't need to exist in Google's eyes, one way or another, whether no indexing or removing. And we had some big wins that, like, in those moments, right? We could see a clear path, and I think even with those big publishers in the search engine results pages, we were able to perform as an e-commerce store should, right? You should, like, those companies shouldn't be able to rank for a product, right? Google's going to see an e-commerce store should rank better, but there's still monsters out there in the products as well. And we were able to rank some collections, and we were able to rank a few pages towards the end. As I'm seeing now, they're really kind of taking off for you, which is great. But yeah, it was a struggle. Like the basic stuff, and by basic I mean my checklist. Has worked so often without even going out and getting links. Just getting what you can handle on your side of the business done has worked with so many businesses I've worked with that this was by far the hardest one I've ever entered personally.
Yeah, I think look, I haven't been there directly for some of the other ones, but I know some of the people that you've worked with and had this stuff work out for pretty well. The big difference for us is I do think, to your point, I think like our product pages all rank very well. All of the standard e-commerce stuff worked out fairly okay, keeping in mind that we have an industry where there just isn't one supply or one brand or one product that just dominates everybody. It really is spread around. So the product pages maybe don't quite yield the same results as others. If let's say we've got 10 of our products that rank in the top 2 or 3 on different pages, there's all the traffic that goes towards standing desk searches is divided up widely between many different products. But the thing I see that was largely different is that with all the other businesses, you were able to at least have one page that created that exponential growth curve for you, right? That one more generic level page where you jumped from, a few hundred searches a month, here and there, or maybe even a few thousand searches a month to tens and hundreds of thousands of searches, which for us would have been, best standing desk, for example. If we could have ranked in the top 2 for that, I mean, that's a business changer by a large amount.
Yeah, and I think coupled with this, we're pushing very hard trying to find the right keywords that had lower competition. Like one of the first things we stumbled on was Veridesk, which is the Kleenex, if you will, of standing desk, is searched more than standing desk. Like people understand their brand equity, or they associate their brand equity with the product, right? More so than they do any other products, and that made it difficult, right? How do you compete with that when you're trying to really sell other brands? We didn't sell Veridesk, but we're trying to sell other brands that we think honestly were a better product. Definitely had better service behind it, and so it made it difficult in discovering where to go organically.
Yeah. I mean, that was the key, right? If we could have sold Veridesk, it would have been great, right? That could have potentially been a gold mine for us. But the fact that we didn't, and it's not that we couldn't attack those terms in creative ways, but it certainly made it a little bit more challenging to go after some of the terms that we did. And honestly, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I think there was a deeper challenge that we had in that, around the time that we started on this project, and initially I set out and was doing all the work myself, right? I mean, that winter between September and the end of the year, I mean, I put hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours into building out new collection pages, new content pages, writing a ton of stuff. And in the process, frankly, took my eyes off the ball a little bit on a few things. We had some issues come up with, one of the VAs that was working for me. But anyways, I don't mean to digress. What I was getting at is that as we were starting this project, other things were causing Standing Desk Nation to contract. And I think the net result of that was that I was never able to pass this off, that it put us in a financial bind where we couldn't invest into other people to write all the content for this, for these new pages we were creating, or at least that's how I felt. I think it started to make me feel a little bit pinched, on my end. And so it kind of, worked our way into a perfect storm of having tons and tons of work we needed to do. Because I think, frankly, let's take the term best standing desk, which was, that was probably our pie. Or let me put it this way. The term was standing desk, but we thought the best standing desk page could be the one that ranked for it. And I think we would have needed so many pieces of content built around that, so many cluster pages to build around that pillar that, ultimately I just wasn't able to do it all myself and didn't feel comfortable spending the funds putting it into somebody else to write it for us.
Yeah, I think there's a few things there, right? Like this has been for lack of a better term, almost a lifestyle business for you all along, right? It has supported your family. It's basically been your life. And so making that transition to business owner was hard, right? It was hard to extrapolate move you out of the business and bring in, start investing the profits back into the business to bring in more people. And at the same time as we're, struggling to get all this work done, the ads just started going up and up and up, right? And the agency we had running them, honestly, I don't want to name names, but they weren't that great. They were, and they were getting more poor every month that we would go in there and kind of look around. And so, it's kind of a double-edged sword of like, we're trying to get the work done in one area while another area that has been paying the bills is starting to fail.
No question. I mean, if sometimes it's hard to invest back into a business when you don't have any sense of abundance, right? So if I could back up a little bit, just to give everybody some context about what we're talking about and sort of shed some light into some of the financial troubles that we had. So when we started the business, when I say we, I mean my wife and I, but it was basically me, in 2016. Thankfully, at that point, we had a large amount of savings and we dove right in, and everything was fine for a while, and the business grew and grew and grew. And frankly, we, if we fast forward from 2016 to summer of 2018, let's say when we were on that trip in Washington, that was the point in time when we were just finally getting over the hump, right? Where we were paying for our lifestyle and a little bit more, right? And I'll be honest, I mean, some of this is Allie and myself maybe not being willing to cut back that much on our lifestyle, because we had really good paying jobs prior to starting this business. We had lived a certain way, and certainly we cut back. I mean, we left California, we moved to Colorado to reduce our expenses that way. And frankly, that made a big difference for us. And we definitely cut back in other ways, but we didn't get tight with our finances when we needed to. We just sort of trusted that things were going to work out. So fast forward to early and mid 2018, we're starting to get over the hump. And that was when I started hiring more people. So at that point, we had 2 people working customer service for us. Finally, we were creating some redundancy in the business. And it also happens to be right before that first episode with that big supplier that I talked about earlier, that basically said, we want you to stop advertising. By the way, to finish that story, it didn't happen. Basically, in a funny story, this supplier was a good one, but a little bit screwed up in some ways as well. So our dealer contact, who was basically the VP of dealer sales of this company, basically told me, keep advertising and just block advertisements in our area so the owner and CEO of the company doesn't see it, because he's the only one. He has these episodes sometimes where he just decides something in his mind, and eventually he'll forget about it and forget he ever said it, and everything will be fine. So just turn off ads here. So we literally blocked ads in their area of Northern California, and everything turned out okay. But that was sort of the beginning of this process wherein we saw our industry shift heavily towards direct sales. So as you alluded to earlier, our cost per click kept going up and going up. And some of it was bad management. Some of it was that a lot of these suppliers that had been our partners were suddenly becoming our competitors. And around the same time, that was when a lot of these cheap Amazon brands started popping up. And I don't know if you remember, but I think it was summer of 2018 when Amazon first started serving shopping ads. Remember, for a long time, they never did shopping ads, and that created a new level of competition for us too. So anyways, so here we are, middle 2018, thinking we're over the hump and we've got a healthy business and everything's going well. Meanwhile, we're completely reliant on one source of traffic, which was basically paid search. And little did we know that there was kind of a tidal wave of competition coming our way that was going to drive the cost of that advertising up, create more competition, and ultimately start cutting back on our margins. So even by September and October and November of 2018, when I was personally neck deep in this process of building out content on our collection pages and building out content on the entire e-commerce store for the purposes of SEO, we were already starting to feel the pinch, and I wasn't comfortable at that point investing anymore into other people to do it for me. And so I became my own, roadblock.
Yeah. To be fair, I think you're being soft on that agency. I used to have a course on Google AdWords. And so, I would peek in there every once in a while. I told you I was going to stay out so I wouldn't get too angry, but I'd peek in there and be like, what are they doing? Right. It just seemed as if they were paring down. Like I've seen very few good agencies in my time. Honestly, I just edited one from OMG Commerce. So shout out to Brett Curry. That one looked fantastic. But the rest of them I've ever seen, they're trying to hit a metric. And every month it gets harder and harder to hit that metric. Like cost per clicks are going to go up. Sales, are going to stay relatively the same. It's hard to continue scaling on Google. And so they have to cut, and they have to cut some more, and they have to cut some more. And it seemed like that's all the agency that we were working with was doing, was cutting more hours of the day. They wouldn't run ads because they weren't hitting quite their metrics. They were probably profitable to us, but they weren't quite hitting the metrics. And then they would, continue cutting keywords and paring back on the ads. And where, you say the most money was made in that business was the big orders, right? And so if we're cutting back orders where we're breaking even because it's not hitting their metric, we might be missing out on those big orders, right? And so slowly but surely, the cost per click went up, and the sales just they weren't there, and the big sales weren't there.
Yeah. So, that's correct. That was a challenge we had from the very beginning. Really what we probably should have been doing, and we tentatively did, but it was probably never formalized. It was, we should have been using, just a blended, ROAS either across all brands or at least by brand from our total sales compared to our ad spend, as opposed to just looking at our return on ad spend inside of our ad account. So what Ben's alluding to is that really the key economics of Standing Desk Nation were such that when we would make a sale for one desk here or one desk there, we were probably breaking even. At times we were probably losing. Actually, at times I know we were losing money. But the way we won is that for every 100 orders that we would get, 2 to 5% of them would be big, right? I mean, we've had orders as big as several hundred desks, and I think the biggest order we ever did was an $88,000 order at one point for desks. And so it's hard to factor that in when you're running ads and solely looking at it from the perspective of what you see inside of your Google Ads account, because those orders are typically coming in as, they're created as draft orders. They're probably, in most cases, they're probably set up as payment for later. So it never really counts as a conversion in there. It's never seen. And so that just massively skews the numbers. So, I mean, maybe if I'm honest, I bear some fault in never really giving we had a tentative return on ad spend number. I think our number was like 5 to 1 blended, but I just don't know how well they watched it. And to make matters worse, around the end of 2018, early 2019, the guy that had been with me from the very beginning, our actual account manager, left, and a new guy came in and just sort of wrecked it. So within a few months, we basically had let them go, and I was managing ads myself, which frankly, gave us a little bit of boost for some time. But I don't think that was, clearly it wasn't enough to stop the trend, that things were just becoming harder and harder to compete against these suppliers that we were often working with, that were selling aggressively direct, spending lots of money, clearly in a land grab mode, not trying to be profitable, trying to grab market share because it was so competitive at that stage. And so, on one hand, we're competing with them when we're advertising, whether it's, just regular search text ads or Google Shopping. On the other hand, they're doing these massive deals and crazy email campaigns and giving away huge percentages of their profit in order to grab that market share. So it was just, it was really cutting into us. And then, of course, basically the sort of the nail in the coffin, and I might be getting ahead of myself, was essentially March of 2020, this year, when the lockdown started. At that point, those bulk orders just stopped, right? There were no companies left to buy orders in bulk. So what was crazy about that time is that we had 2 months specifically in April and May, where our order volume was up significantly. We were seeing 250 to 300% the number of orders that we were getting just 2-3 months prior. But we weren't making any money because every single order was one desk, going into somebody's home here, going into somebody's home there. So this entire economic model that we had built on these 20, 50, 100 unit orders was just dried up, right? So it was, that was kind of I don't want to say it's the death blow, right? The company's still going, and over the course of this year, I've worked really hard to sort of change the way that business works to get it to break even and ultimately make a little bit of money. But that really put the company, and ultimately kind of, in some ways, it put our partnership in a little bit of a bind.
Yeah, and you jumped a year there, right? So it's not like you just sat on your hands and were like, well, this sucks. It's going down the tubes. Let's just see how fast it goes, right? You made moves, and we talked about it in episode 2. So I would encourage you to go back and listen to that. But a deal came in front of us, and we went and acquired a brand that we enjoyed selling. I think we go deep in that story in episode 2, but it was the negative 50 day that winter. I remember it very, very vividly, being just how cold it was. But you went out and acquired this brand. This was all you, and so that helped us kind of turn things around and have a brand going for us. You fired the PPC company and started managing them yourself, right? I hopped in there and tweaked a couple things, but we could see the writing on the wall, right? And so, kudos to you for like snatching up that brand and moving forward that way. And then, the rest of the year kind of continued down that trend as we started moving that brand forward. And then, I think we talk about this more in depth on episode 2, but I'm literally in Thailand on vacation just by myself, and you go acquire another company. And so like, you weren't sitting idly by watching this happen, right? Like, you were out there constantly trying to make things work, which is what every business owner should do, right? You should be constantly looking for pivots when things aren't going your way.
Yeah, I don't think I looked at it that way at the time, but I mean, certainly in hindsight, it feels that way. I would say that all along, I thought at some point Sandy Destination was gonna pull itself through. And again, I don't mean this. It sounds like it's dead, right? The business is still going. It's not dead, but it's been a challenge, let's just say, in 2020. But yeah, I mean, we had the opportunity in early 2019. We purchased InMovement, which was, our first foray into having our own brand. We had been selling their products exclusively for about 6 months because as they were sort of closing down the brand, we purchased all of their inventory. And so we kind of knew what we were getting into, and I'm glad we did that. Although frankly, that was actually, if you look at it, that was a little part of the downfall of Standing Destination, because that was a huge chunk of revenue and frankly of net income that Standing Destination was pulling in. And we basically said, here, we're taking this all and making it a direct business, from InMovement.com as opposed to from Standing Destination. So while this is happening, while over the course of 2019, while Standing Destination is struggling and I'm in the process of trying to fix problems that we found in the ads and just trying to build that back up. InMovement is sort of taken off like a bit of a rocket ship, and then of course eventually at the end of 2019 or at the beginning of 2020 we acquired Unsit as well, so we could add treadmills to the mix. So it was kind of this weird deal, whereas as Standing Destination was going downhill, InMovement was taking off in a way that I could barely keep up with, and maybe that's part of this too. There was a time that, I mean, frankly, it's still now. If I spend 5% of my time on Standing Destination, that's probably generous. At some point, you just realize this is where your bread is going to be buttered, and you got to decide where to put your time. So where you've got to put your time and where you have to put your money. And that became pretty clear, late 2019, early 2020.
Yeah, and you can see our efforts on the other side trying to help, right? Like I'm looking at analytics right now. You can see the wave of SEO. It takes some time to get this right. It took some time to get all the things done on the website that needed to be done. Like, it was just a massive site, still is. But you can see the wave coming up, and I think that might have slowed down what was inevitable at that point, I think. But I think both of us could see the writing on the wall, especially with Standing Destination. And again, I want to pat you on the back publicly. The 2 moves you made there were really, really smart, right? Like buying up all the inventory so that you could sell what was left of that company, then finding a way to acquire that company, and then acquiring another company. Like, the pivots you made are incredible, man. Like, pat yourself on the back. I hope you take time to sit back and go, wow, I'm did some smart things. Like it's easy to stress about how things have gone, or looking back, watching things deteriorate. But like you made some really smart moves.
To be honest, it's a little scary to think about, because had we not made those moves, where would I be right now? I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that my family would not be in a good place if we were still relying on Sandy News Nation for our income here. So I don't look at it as, I guess I it's hard to pat myself on the back, even if I should, because it's kind of like I have this weird superstition, right? That if I were to ever, I guess I'm averse to playing the lottery, because I have this weird feeling in the back of my mind, because I kind of believe that what goes around comes around in some way. I kind of believe that if I ever won the lottery, that if I can beat the odds and win the lottery, I can also beat the odds and die in a plane crash, And so I kind of look at it that way. That I'm glad and fortunate that we made the moves that we did, and that we had the opportunity to make the moves that we did when we did. Otherwise, I shudder to think about the position we'd be in now. And it's funny, as we're talking about this, I'm picturing. So, of course, I still coach for the dropship lifestyle community, and I talk to multiple people every week. And I think to myself, I hope I'm not scaring people off from taking leaps of faith and trying to be an entrepreneur, that there's more danger than upside in all this stuff. I mean, I could see how somebody could easily listen to this conversation and think, man, I don't want to be in that position. I don't want this to happen to me. On the other hand, if I'd never started Sandy News Nation, I never would have had the relationships that brought us in movement and Unsit and all these things that we have going for us now.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Everything is your fault. It doesn't matter where you're at in life, whether you're working a job, whether you're an entrepreneur, everything's your fault. Like if you had a tough year this year, it wasn't COVID-19's fault. It was your fucking fault. And so like I would rather it's on me. Whether I'm winning or whether I'm losing, it's my fault. Like I want that. And some people don't, right? Some people want, and I'm heavily air quoting here, the safety of a job, but the same shit could happen, right? If somebody was working for you, you might have to let them go because of this, right? And so, like, I don't know, man, I prefer it. I think most people listening are entrepreneurs. If you're not, hopefully you can understand where we're coming from here. Like, I welcome that stress. I welcome the ability to have to make those decisions rather than hope somebody else makes it for me.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, the largest fear that I have, the single greatest driver for me, other than just being able to provide for my family, I think that one's sort of obvious. But I guess the second greatest driver of my life is the fear of having to go back and work for somebody else. I honestly, I don't know if I could survive that way anymore. Somebody close to me right now is actually ironically going through the process of selling their company, and essentially it's a retirement event. He's going to stay on and work for probably 2 or 3 years, but kind of doesn't have to. But I think that the biggest thing that he's worried about in this process, because he's going to be financially set at this point, and his biggest fear is, can I work for somebody else for these 2 to 3 years that I've committed to? Am I going to survive? And frankly, we constantly joke that it's okay. He'll just get fired and everything will be good. He'll say or do something wrong, and I feel like I would probably be in the same shoes if I had to go back that way. So yeah, you're making my point. I don't want to scare anybody away from doing this. On the other hand, if you're the kind of person that is scared based on the conversation we're having, if you're scared that a business might fail, then you're probably not cut out for this. It's probably not your thing. And all I can say is the sooner the better. I hope that if you're thinking about, getting into entrepreneurship or starting your own business, I hope you're doing it sooner than later, because the later you get in life and the more responsibilities you have, the more you have to lose and the less chances you can take. And to a large degree, when Sandy News Nation was having some of the challenges it was having, if I was 27 and single and I could just say, screw it, I'm going to live off top ramen and chicken broth for the next few months, and I'm going to pay some people to help me proliferate the content on this site, I would have done it. But I didn't have that option anymore because A, the lifestyle that we were living wasn't my choice, right? I have to share that choice with my wife and with my family. And B, I've got more mouths to feed. I just had more at risk.
Look, and I don't think this is a failure either. If I'm dead honest with you, I told you when we, decided to part ways, if you're going to shut this down, I'll take it. Like the numbers that were shocking, and I'll cut this out if you don't want me to share, but we did a 7-figure year. Like the last year we were in, we did 7 figures, zero profit,
7-figure years,
zero profit on that 7 figures. But like most businesses fail in the first place, right? And only 4% of businesses ever get to 7 figures ever. And so you got there, whether there was profit behind it or not, like the ability to get those sales is incredible, right? And so there's other ways to grow your business that I think we were just beginning to work on, like building out all of the emails that should have been, that should have existed in that business, building out some of the pages that, as I'm going out and as I'm looking at analytics right now are really starting to take off, right? And so like I think there's a lot of things that still could be done. It's not a dead business. It's not a failure. It definitely, the profit dried up, no question, but like it's not a failure, right? And so like you're able to pivot. I know you're going to pivot, and you have already, right? The business that you acquired last December or January has been incredible in 2020, and I'm hoping you want to talk a little bit about that. But like it's not a failure, right? So I hope you're like truly not beating yourself up in hindsight about it.
No, I'm not. So for context, just to sort of think about it, 2018, I think we did about like 1.2 or 1.3 million on Sandy Destination, and we made 6 figures easily in 2018. 2019, we did about the same revenue, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say that it was a little more than half of that in net revenue. So just to give you an idea of what happened, sales didn't really drop off all that much. Just to Ben's point, the profit that was coming out of it went way down because we just kept, from the paid side, we kept our foot on the accelerator and kept trying to keep up. And maybe if I'm honest, I was probably a little overly focused on revenue as opposed to watching the net numbers a little bit more closely. But that's not an easy. It's easy to say in hindsight, right? You know how hard it is to get real net numbers in real time and things like that. So yeah, I don't take it as as necessarily a personal failure. I mean, things happen, right? Look, I mean, the nature of the competitive landscape changed drastically. It went from a fairly competitive industry into a highly competitive industry that was largely where we were largely competing against highly highly capitalized manufacturers as opposed to other dealers and things like that. It just really changed the way things worked. And then of course we got kicked in the pants by COVID, like so many businesses did. And ironically, here we are in one of the most, how would I say it? One of the fastest growing spaces as a result of COVID. Standing desks are selling like hotcakes right now. I mean, the industry has been dealing with supply shortages and prices are going up, and it's just the ocean is so big and so blue right now. But the problem is, as a drop shipping store with low margins, we couldn't really pallet the one desk here, one desk there kind of business model. So it kind of brings us to this moment now where we sort of have an interesting decision to make, and this maybe was the starting point of where you and I started talking about whether it was time to move on. One of the decisions that I'm still really struggling with is, to your point, some of the pages on Sandy Destination that we've been working on for 2 years now are starting to take off a little bit. I mean, not exponentially, they're not taking off like we would hope, but basically there is a lot of SEO value in standingdestination.com. Simultaneously, there is not a lot of e-commerce value in it anymore. Is it time to say, forget this, let's not live with the headache of fulfilling orders and doing customer service and all the stuff that comes with having an e-commerce store, and instead just flip it into into a content site and just sign up for affiliate links with all of our current suppliers and see what happens. frankly, probably the only thing that stopped me from doing that is that also sounds like a ton of work. I have an idea of how to do it, but like how am I going to have time for that? It's weird. It's like Standards Nation has gone from being this great standalone business to really just more of an asset that can hopefully just help drive more traffic and more users into InMovement.
Yeah, look, from the outside, just looking in, especially now that we've parted ways, I should write you out this like whole memo. Here's all like the next 10 things I would have done, right? And so from my point of view, I would shut off ads, right? $5, $6, $7 a click for a $200 standing desk is insane. There's a reason that we couldn't make it work, right? Even I think when I left, we were at a 10 to 12 ROAS, right? The return on ad spend, like you're spending $1 and getting $10 to $12 back, and it's still not profitable, which is insane, right? I challenge anybody who's listening to this who runs Google Ads, go see if your numbers look like that. I bet they don't, right? We worked really hard on that. And so, could you flip it to only remarketing? Could you set up all the emails that need to be in your business and increase the average order value, increase the lifetime customer value, and work solely on the organic traffic and hopefully return it to profitability? I think you could, but it's probably equal amount of work as to say, just come in here and let's flip all these add to cart buttons to affiliate links, right? Either one's going to be work, and both of them are probably a gamble.
Yeah. The question is, so just being totally transparent here. I mean, the business is basically upside down for 2020, right? And part of it was mistakes on my part in April and May, like I talked about, when all of a sudden all these people started coming in and buying, and me not seeing what was happening and adjusting our advertising strategy fast enough to basically say, look, these orders aren't profitable. We need to stop putting money into this paid traffic engine. Part of me was thinking, some big orders are going to come. Something good is going to happen, and I didn't see the writing on the wall fast enough. But basically, what I'm getting at here is, let's just say, okay, so November was the first profitable month that Standards Nation has had, if I'm remembering this correctly, since 2019. And I use the term profitable loosely. Just barely, right? So let's just say that at best case scenario, let's say that Standards Nation is producing 5% of the net revenue that InMovement is producing. It might actually be significantly less than that. Is it worth putting the time in for me right now to build out all those, all the emails and work more on those, on making sure that the key content pages are optimized, changing all of the see, we've talked about this, right? I wouldn't change it over to a different site. I would keep it in Shopify and find a way to essentially use the add to cart button as an affiliate link. But still, that would take a little bit of work too, right? I've got to find somebody that can develop that for us, and then B, somehow you have to put in the individualized link into every single page where you have one of those things. That's a lot of work. Is it worth it? Do I let it ride? It's a weird position, but I can't bring myself to walk away from it. I can't just like let it die. It's just at this weird point where it needs work, but I'm not sure if there's enough value out of it that can come from it to put in that work or to pay to put in that work. The only thing that I'm sort of holding on to is that it can be a major engine for InMovement. There's no question about it, because especially for the treadmill desk side, it does carry a lot of authority in our industry.
Well, I think I know what I would do, honestly. Just like, I almost want to challenge you and say, all you have to do is give me 10% of your business, and I will come in there and do it all. No, so next week, I think it's going to be next week. I have a guy coming on who has a fantastic email course. Mostly, it's an e-commerce email course. And so I'm excited to share that, and maybe that'll change your opinion. Look, I think either way, you're going to have to do some work, but I would struggle to let this go, right? Like you said, Best Treadmill Desk has been a fantastic page for us. Even Best Standing Desk Converters looks like it's starting to take off. A lot of the random generic pages that we created are starting to work. And so there's an asset there. What you do with it, I don't think you can lose, but we just separated, right? And so trailing 12, like I said, 7 figures, no profit, right? And so you have to do something, but it's easy to get distracted, right? Like the business you acquired for InMovement, the treadmill desk, it's a fantastic treadmill desk, literally the best on the market. And then COVID came, right? And it's been blowing up for you. And so it's very easy for you to be distracted by that business when we have a 16-week lead time and we can't satisfy the market enough. Like it just kept selling, right? And so it was easy for you to get distracted, but at the same point, this brings up another pain that we discussed on when we decided to kind of part ways of like cash flow, right? Like you were already strained by Standing Destination, no longer paying bills, right? And this is your livelihood. Again, I don't want to call you not a business owner, but this is definitely more lifestyle business for you and for your family. This supports what you're trying to do. And by having COVID, by having the shipping delays, by having just demand go through the roof, I imagine that put a ton of stress on you. And I know it did, right, through our discussions, but I'd love for you to share some of that, as I think a lot of people could learn from where it looks like you're just an amazing business owner, right? And you must be just swimming in cash, and that's definitely not the case.
Yeah. Well, I would add a couple other things, but the big other thing too that you didn't mention is burnout. I mean, so yeah, a lot of stuff happened after grinding on Standing Destination for a long time, and just not seeing much success. Right? We'd have a little uptick here and uptick there, but it wasn't working out. And then obviously 2020, it just kind of cratered to some degree, at least from a net perspective, a net take home revenue perspective, it cratered. So that itself puts a lot of stress on me because yeah, like you said, for you, it was, you're taking 10%, which means you were taking nothing for a while. There was nothing there. I think we were paying ourselves management fees, but that was basically just coming out of our bottom line. So for me though, that was my, livelihood at stake. That was money that I had been living off of that was no longer there. At the same time, yes, InMovement was taking off, but the trick about InMovement, being that it's our own brand, is that yes, it is profitable, but it is also a capital vacuum, right? In order to pay for these, these standing desks and these treadmills, I mean, we're talking many thousands of dollars in container quantities, so while on paper it might seem like the company's doing well, and it's doing fantastically, just from an owner perspective, you don't realize the benefits of the profit that you're making early on, because all of that money is going right back in to pay for more inventory, to pay for more growth. And frankly, in the world that we're in now. So again, Standing Destination did not like COVID. InMovement loved COVID because it was the opposite. It was perfectly set up for the one desk order, one treadmill order here and there going into the home. That's what it's built on. We had the margins to do that. So InMovement is taking off, but that means I've got to keep putting more money in, right? That means I'm paying for more advertising. That means I'm paying for more inventory, and of course lead times are getting longer and longer and longer because what happened to us is we happen to share the same components as the home fitness industry, which is probably the one industry that took off more aggressively than the home office market. So for example, I ordered a container of treadmills in, I want to say June of this year. Those treadmills literally just landed on Friday. No, it was Friday. So basically that's early December. So it's just crazy. So I'm putting deposits down on these containers and all this stuff. So 2020 became an interesting year where things got pretty tight for our family, and I think that really, it did two things. It put financial stress on us, obviously, right? Because even this business that's working well, we couldn't take a lot of the money out yet. And simultaneously, Standing Destination isn't producing much of anything. In fact, it's not producing anything. And then of course that just creates this massive stress that sort of led to burnout. And I remember having conversations with Ben in probably starting in like July of this year, saying, man, I'm burnt out. I'm just not getting much work done. Frankly, I think we started losing touch a little bit. We weren't talking as much. I think we both always have a little bit of burnout in the summer because we want to be outside. We want to be playing golf and stuff, but it was just massive this year. And so I think that was when, if we can sort of get into our great divorce, that was how I think it started for me. It probably originated with a sense of guilt that I think if you're going to have a partnership, both partners have to be on the same page about what's going into the business and how quickly or how fast we're trying to go. And I just reached a point this July and August where I just didn't have anything left to give. And so I just needed to coast. I probably, what I think I was actually doing for a while is I was in front of my screen. I was there. I was present. I wasn't allowing myself to escape at all. So it just kept going, right? I was not working, but I also wasn't resting. I wasn't rejuvenating myself. And so it eventually just got to the point where I just started feeling like this doesn't feel like a good environment for a partnership. Frankly, I'm thinking more about how I can set my family up so that I don't have this issue again in the future, so I can protect our own finances better. And my wife and I, as I think she started to see the things that I was going through, and we started really internalizing how life was changing as a result of COVID, that was also when she and I decided that I think maybe now is as good a time as any to start traveling a little bit. So we made the decision in August that we were going to purchase a trailer and spend about a year and a half traveling around the country with our young kids and trying to be a little bit more present and together and see more of the country. And so, if I sum all that up, it just basically felt like this is not a good environment for a partnership to thrive, right? I feel like I wouldn't be holding up my end of the bargain. Frankly, I feel like I'm in a place where I just want to protect the interests of my family more than anything else. I don't want to have these financial stresses anymore. And so that's kind of, I think, what led to me approaching you. I mean, let's be honest, it was my idea. Although as close as we are, you obviously knew it was coming. You weren't the least bit surprised.
No, from my side of things were just getting fun, right? Like, COVID was a blessing from a guy who doesn't have to look at books. So, like, to be clear, in our partnership, I didn't focus on I never once looked at the books. And the whole time we were together, like, you totally could have cooked them and screwed me over. I doubt you did, but like, I never looked once. There was a lot of things I didn't pay attention to, which is what a good partnership should be. Like, I just trusted you were doing your thing. And so from my side of things, we built best treadmill desk on Standing Destination, which was driving traffic. We had just gotten InMoving starting to rock and roll. Like, they had some old articles that I think I only got a couple of them up and transferred over, and they were starting to take off. And things were getting fun. And then COVID came and was like, oh, everybody wants one of these in their house. And so from my side of things, it was just getting fun, right? I had no idea that you were as stressed as you were financially. I knew that we had 2, 3, 4, 5 containers in the works or on the water, and like, the sales just kept rolling in, right? I think we had at one point had 18-week lead time on our product page, and it didn't matter. It just kept selling, right? And honestly, the ads got easier. That was my first like foray, if you will, into YouTube ads, and they just worked. And so it was getting fun from my side of things. And like you said, we were supposed to meet every Wednesday, right? And obviously in summer, oftentimes we'd be like, let's skip this week, I'm at the golf course. Or you would say, let's skip this week, I'm at the golf course, right? And like, that's just, we live in the, the northern climate. When it's summer, we're outside doing stuff. And so, but those weeks, they got more often, right? Like we would miss contact. I think both of us could just see, I could see you burning out really, really bad. And then I could see, my focus, of having fun, but like every time I would push harder, I could see you getting more stressed. And so like you said, I could see it coming, right? I think when you called, I think I interrupted you in the middle of it and was like, yep, saw this coming. You know what I mean? Like I could just tell how burnt out you were. And I don't think that's talked about often enough in entrepreneurship land either, of like, pushing really hard. And sometimes like, grind is talked about a lot. Hustle, right? It's not often talked about how much recovery are you doing, how much time are you taking for yourself, and it definitely should be talked about more.
Yeah, no doubt, no question about it. And then the other thing is, I fell into the trap of becoming too reliant on myself. I set myself up as a bottleneck for a lot of this stuff, and I think a lot of it was. A lot of that was born out of the financial struggles that sort of started late 2018 or in 2019, and sort of it changed I don't want to say it changed my mindset, but it created a sense of financial stress, or it took away some of the abundance that I had felt prior, and it caused me probably to underinvest into the help that I needed for some of these things. And even as I say that, I wonder if I'm being honest. I mean, I don't know. For a lot of that time, I just don't know if I was in a place where I could have invested. It was what it was. That what I had to give was my time. And of course, that's a vicious cycle when you're in my situation. If, when you're 23, 25, 26, whatever, man, just grind away. Who cares? It's so easy to just take a break because you choose how much money you need, right? You choose what your desire is to take out of the business. In my situation, that wasn't the case anymore. I had clear a very specific amount of money that I needed to make to support my family and the lifestyle that we've chosen and that we've had for a long time.
Well, look, we can talk about burnout if you want to, but I do want to transition a little bit, right? So there was ups and downs, but like in the end, I think there was way more pros than cons in like what has happened in the last couple of years. So like you were there for me. The last time I exited a business, you helped me frame it the right way so that it was, less my own BS in my head of like sad abandonment, whatever. Like it was a wonderful, wonderful moment, and it was hard for me to frame it. But you were in the room when we decided to part ways in another partnership, and you framed it like that. Like for 2 years, you've been literally my best friend. We talk about baseball more than we talk about business, and so there were so many pros that came out of this. And like, I want to hear more of like your decision to kind of step back. And again, I keep saying lifestyle business almost like it's a bad thing. It's definitely not. Like this is what you want for your family. And I'd love for you to dive into that. Cause like being open and honest about why you're doing this, I think is going to help a lot of people. Like you're choosing to slow down growth, which is not what entrepreneurs do. You're choosing to slow it down and back off, so that you can, realize what's more important to you. And I think 2020, if it's done anything for a lot of people, it's make them realize what is more important. And it's oftentimes not what we think it was.
I guess I'll tackle two things. I mean, the first thing is just thinking about partnership in general, and our partnership in general. I mean, I genuinely feel the same way. What's funny is I honestly, I don't look back on much of anything with great regret. I mean, honestly, I can't think of any one thing that I specifically regret at all. I understand why I made the decisions that I made, and I'm comfortable with all of them, even though there were certainly faults and errors and mistakes that were made along the way. I don't regret those mistakes by any means. But yeah, I mean, the number one thing was, it was great. I mean, it was the relationship. I mean, the friendship that you and I started before the partnership, right? But that really crystallized as a result of just spending more time together as partners. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's pretty easy, and frankly, it says a lot that we're able to break up our partnership and still feel that way and still have this conversation about it. And I'm glad I was there for you. Yeah, I mean, you had some tough moments, and I'm also glad that I was there for you for some of your most amazing moments that you've had over the last couple of years too. I've learned a lot, right? I mean, I really, my skill set has diversified quite a bit in the 2 years since we've been working together, and I've taken more ownership of things, of understanding things a little bit more specifically myself, rather than trust other people. And I don't mean to contradict myself. I don't mean to say that I should be doing everything myself. I just think it's important that I understand everything better myself, and at least spend a little bit of time in it before you can hand it off to somebody else. So I agree. I mean, zero regrets about bringing in a partner. Nothing but good thoughts as I reflect on it. As far as like why, where I'm going and why we're doing, or why I'm doing what I'm doing. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. 2020 crystallized a lot of things for everybody, and I think for me, one of those things was that I don't have the desire to run a $15-20 million e-commerce business. That actually doesn't sound, or 50, whatever it is. I think I've realized that's not what I want, and that's not to say that I consider this a lifestyle business and that I'm just going to take the profits and run. That's not my desire either. I mean, I guess I've sort of realized that there can be a sweet spot, right? You don't have to have your foot all the way down on the accelerator pedal in running a business. So essentially the decision that I think started to be made in the summer, but that is pretty clearly coalesced is, yeah, we're going to grow the business. I'm going to keep putting money in, but it's not like I've got a burning desire to put $100,000 a month into paid social. I'm actually quite confident that if we brought in the right amount of investment money to scale up inventory of this business and to scale up spend in paid social and in YouTube, I think I could. I think this business could grow quickly. I just don't know that I'm prepared for that. And it's not that I don't think I can do it. It's that I just don't know that I want to do it. I don't think I have the drive to push that hard when I've got two kids that are 5 and 7, right? They still like me. They still think I'm cool. They're at the stage of their life where they still can easily be homeschooled and there are just so many other things I want to put my time into other than just growing a business. And I think if you're going to do that, if you're going to be that person that has let's say a $20 to $50 million e-commerce company, that's all encompassing, right? That's your whole life. If I was single, maybe I could see myself doing that, but I finally realized I just finally realized that the vision for my life for the next 3 to 5 years didn't look like that.
So I think I went through the same process as you. I am attacking it in a different way, though, right? Like I do want, publicly have a goal to exit one company that I own for $20 million in 3 years. I think I can get there, honestly, pretty easily. Hopefully, 3 years from now, I don't look back at myself as a dumbass for saying that. But like, I want to get there, but I knew it couldn't be me, right? And so, I'm fortunate enough to be in the situation I am where I had a healthy exit earlier this year, and so I'm trying to use some of that finance rather than my time to get where I need to go, right? And it's going to come with people too, which is why I've partnered with Leighton and Leanna on the pets business of like getting myself out of all of those seats and really rising to business owner status. And it's going to take either a shit ton of your time or a shit ton of your money or equity to get there, right? And that's your two choices. And so like I want the same thing as you, maybe not driving around in an RV or a truck with my kids for 2 years. That doesn't necessarily appeal to me as much as it does to you. But like I do want that same freedom. I don't want to be in an office in a suit managing people, running a $50 million company. Like that doesn't sound appealing to me whatsoever either. And so I've been searching for I think the same answers as you. And it's interesting that there's many different ways to skin a cat. Like what you're choosing to do is exactly right for you, and that's why you should do it, right? And what I'm choosing to do, I hope, turns out to be the right thing for me. I think we're all just learning as we go. And so there's nothing I want more from our partnership, from our friendship, from any consulting client I work with than to like it's your experience, right? This is the Brian Angel experience, and it should be everything you need it to be.
It's highly circumstantial. Yeah, and I think some of this is born out of the fact that In Movement happens to be in a very at the moment, a fairly reliable place. I mean, at the risk of eating my words 2 years from now, right? But it's in a good place.
Stay tuned for episode number 3 with Brian.
I know. I mean, it's growing, and I'm not having to. I mean, yes, I alluded earlier that we're putting a lot of my money is going back into the business, but I'm not having to take on investment in order to, feed the growth engine of this business. It's doing it by virtue of its own brand equity. The quality of the products are kind of growing the brand for us, and the nature of the moment it is growing the brand for us. Frankly, we're in the right place at the right time. So I don't need to do that stuff to grow this business. And so I feel like I'm in a place where I don't have to do those things. I think I've over time, and maybe this is a little bit more, I feel this more presently now because of COVID, but at some point you just realize that you have to stop saying in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years, right? It's, at least for me, that's what has coalesced over the years, that yes, goals are important, but if you're constantly living for or working towards a future moment in time, it inherently implies that you're not living in this one.
And that you can't be happy until then either, right?
Yeah. And I guess that's okay if your passion is that process. If there's nothing you enjoy more than working towards that goal. But I can be honest with myself and say, yeah, I love my business. I love what I do. When it's not burning me out, I love what I do. But I also love a lot of other things too, right? And I'm gonna lean into some of those other things more.
Well, I love it. I'll be happy when is something I had to work on this year through my work with Elliot. And it's easy to put some magical goal, and that when you get there, you'll be happy, right? And I'll do everything I can to get there, and you end up ruining relationships and burning out, and it's not fun, right? And so I don't know. I couldn't be happier for your decision, what you decided to do, and I know it's going to make you extremely happy. If you don't mind, I'd love to talk through some of the intricate details. I think last week or the last 2 episodes ago, perhaps, I was talking about partnerships with Nate Ginsburg, and I threw a feeler out there, and I said, hey, reach out if you want to partner. And I think I had a couple people reach out and say, what does that even look like? And so if you don't mind, I'd love to talk through our details. We don't have to get super specific, but like you said in the beginning, you offered 5. I said, look, I want to buy 5. If you want to give me 5 on top of that, great. I think 10 makes a lot of sense, but what does that even look like? So, how did you evaluate the company at that point? How did 10% even work? How did an earn-in work? Do you mind talking through some of these dirty details?
Yeah, sure. I think, there's the way I really valued it, and there's the way we did it on paper. When you put in a contract and all this stuff, it makes a fairly intuitive process a little less so, I think, right? So, in our case, once we agreed, hey, let's do this, let's become partners. We basically went to the books and said, here's what the trailing 12 months looked like, and let's come up with a multiple. In reality, I made it very clear to you from the very beginning, I was willing to give you 5% of my business, right? I was basically, the math I was doing at the beginning was, I was fairly confident that if I give you 5% of my business, that the things we were going to do together as a result of our partnership were going to be far greater than the 5% I was losing in the monthly net revenue or the annual net revenue, right? That was the simple math. And frankly, I would, anybody else who's thinking about a partnership, I would encourage you to start at that level. Think really simply. You can't really quantify what somebody else's partnership is going to bring you in terms of real revenue, but you can have a pretty good sense, especially if you're bringing them on for a specific purpose, which I think is important. I think that's when I brought, or I shouldn't say when I brought you on, that sounds egotistical. When we decided to partner, my goal was largely to focus on your help for improving the SEO of the company. I knew there was a specific purpose for that, and frankly, I think one of the mistakes we made was maybe not having clearer, a clearly defined set of roles for each other. Because it just, even though I don't think we ever had any animosity or anything like that, it just naturally can lead to that. We should have been very clear. Your job is to improve the SEO of the business, but that wasn't really true either, right? Part of the reason I wanted you on board was for you to help me improve the paid advertising for the store and all kinds of other things. So there's the simple basic way I think this person can improve the company this much. But ultimately, what we did was agree that here's the trailing 12 months of revenue, and I think we agreed to something like a 3-ish X multiple of that. So let's just say that the net revenue for those trailing 12 months, I want to say it was like 120,000 or something like that at that point. And so we valued it based on 3X that ish. And then the way we did it, because I had made it clear up front that I was willing to give you part of the business, and you said, look, can I potentially then buy more as well? So essentially what we did is I sold you 10% of the company, but we discounted it at the cost of 5. So, and the idea for anybody who's asking, why would you want to give somebody an extra 5% of your business? The thing you have to weigh is the person who's becoming your partner. If they're just a 2 or a 3 or a 5% partner, are they going to, is that going to get them up in the morning and get them excited to work for you and help grow your business? Is that enough, especially, given the size of your company, to motivate them? And so I took that point to heart from Ben. And frankly, I think it was Heather that actually pushed you to ask for that, if I remember the story correctly. So anyways, I thought that was a really compelling argument from Ben. So that's how we structured it in our case.
Yeah, I like you said, the 5% doesn't necessarily do too much for. I don't know. It really depends what role you're seeking, right? And I think I knew where you wanted help or where we were going to work together, and plus we just had quite a relationship already at that point, so it was interesting to see. But like, so 2 points from there. Number one, like, first off, if anybody's listening and you want to give me 5% or give Brian 5% of your business, I think both of us would listen intently to free 5%. But like, the second point was like, I wanted more, right? So that I had a reason to want to push harder. And I thought for sure that I saw the upside there. And while it took a long time, I think we were starting to see the upside of it, even though the paid side fell off. And so it just like, where did we come to the 3x? Do you remember? Like, I've exited a few businesses, and so some of them have been under 3x when they were smaller businesses, right around $500,000 to $1 million in revenue was at the 3x mark. I've exited a few for even higher than that, right? Like when the businesses get bigger, they get a much higher multiple level. Do you remember how we came to 3x? Was it just like our experience of other businesses that have sold around that range?
Yeah, I think my recollection of it was one of the things we rationalized is, look, it's a store that's reliant on one source of acquisition, right? We didn't even really have much email at that point, so it was because it was such a one-dimensional store. I think we agreed that the fair value, the fair multiple was relatively low, I mean, frankly, I don't remember even negotiating much. I think we kind of came to the same number. I honestly, I don't remember what the multiple was, but it was something in that range.
And so I earned in, right? And so there's two ways to buy a new business. There's the way like I could have came cash, and I'm just going to make up mythical numbers, right? Let's say the business was valued at $100,000, and I would have come in at $5,000 for that 10%, right? Because you gave 5%. I could give you $5,000 and immediately take equity in that business. Or what we did was like, whatever the profits were next month, 10% of that would be applied to the loan. Essentially, you're loaning me money, right? So I would owe you that month over month with a small interest rate attached.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people would call it an earn-in, right? So basically, your 10% of the profits were coming back to me. So instead of you taking those profits, they were just being paid to me to purchase your shares of the company. But in reality, the way that we have to do it for contractual legal reasons is we technically have to loan you that money. So, again, in your example, let's say it was $5,000, we would loan you $5,000 and give you that stock, and then you would pay off that loan over the course of however long it took for the profit to pay for it.
Yeah, and so again, if the business made $10,000 profit in the first month, I was entitled to 10% of that. So $1,000 would come off the loan. I would earn in $1,000 of the $5,000, plus a little fee on the end, right? And I think somewhere in there, halfway through, we didn't earn in, but like halfway through, I ended up just paying you what was left on the balance there, and then so that's how it went in, right? And so pretty easy to get into a business without money. That's one way to do it. And then on the way out, same sort of thing. We decided to do an earn out so that it wouldn't affect the business, right? And so, assuming a 3x multiple on the way out, you take the trailing 12, put the 3x multiple on there, and then if you pay me over 3 years, it's essentially like I was part of the business for the next 3 years at the level it's at. If you grow it, even better, right? Then it's just a fraction of what you're paying me. But now I'm loaning you on the way out, right? So if you're paying me 36 payments on the way out over 3 years, I have to put an interest rate on that too, because I'm essentially loaning you to earn back out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the only difference is that this time when I bought you out, and keep in mind here, it's not the business buying Ben out. It's me, right? I'm actually paying him to buy back my shares of these companies, which is interesting. Or in my case, it's the parent company or the holding company that we use. But in our case, and this is an example of frankly how you should have an open mind, that there are so many different ways you can work a contract. And I can tell you that for all the contracts I've done in the last 2 to 3 years, every one has been drastically different, and all directly relevant to the situation between the two parties. But in our case, in this contract, we agreed to a flat monthly fee. We said, here's the value, and we agreed to a payout structure over over 3 years. So unlike yours, where you were paying in based on the profits of the company, this one is just a set monthly number. But I mean, for anybody that's listening, what I would say is, again, you can do this anyway, right? I've done, royalty-based contracts for buyouts or partnerships or things like that. We've done earn-ins, like he's talked about, with notes. And frankly, I think what matters is that you just, that you have have really good communication with whoever the person is that you're thinking about working with, and you understand what's a priority to them, right? If Ben and I were going to go back and decide to be a partner for a company, and he was going to earn or buy his way in, does he have a lot of cash on hand? Would it just be easier for him to pay the cash now, or would he rather defer that payment and in exchange for that also pay a little interest on that for taking his time with it? There's always a way to work contracts like this between two parties. Just have an open mind and just try not to make it out to be a zero-sum game, right? You got to make sure that it works for both parties.
Yeah, there's some episodes of Business Lunch with Roland Frazier in the last few months where he goes over, 10, 15 different ideas in one podcast of how to acquire a business with no money down, and start thinking through those things. Like, if you're wanting to go acquire a business to grow, as Brian's done with these two businesses, is there a way to go acquire that business without money because the owner, number one, maybe they just want to stop working, they don't need a lump sum, or they do need a lump sum, they want to pay off their house or something, which ends up being way less multiple than what their business is actually worth, and you can come in and structure a deal to get their house paid off and acquire the business for cheap. There's so many ways to structure a deal. This is just how we did it, and I hope this episode was helpful. I hope you guys learn, number one, partnerships are fun. You can separate partnerships and still be best friends. Number two, that all businesses aren't rosy. I really hope you got some value out of Brian, talking through Standing Destination and where he might go. I hope to have him back on a year from now, and he made the decision of one of those directions to go, and that he's crushing it. But I really hope somehow we got value here. If you have further questions, you can reach out to either one of us. But is there anything else you wanted to add on this whole partnership episode, Brian?
No. I just hope. Look, when you and I talk, I know we meander, right? We go all over the place, and hopefully we didn't. Hopefully we did this in a way that helped everybody and that made sense. One of the things that both Ben and I know share a lot of passion in is just helping people, and frankly, in coaching as well. That's another thing that we didn't talk about. Another big reason that I'm wanting to shift the way I manage my business is I do want to start devoting more time to coaching, just because it's so energizing, right? It really does. That is a great way I've found to recharge my batteries when I'm burnt out on my own business. So if anybody wants help, best way to reach me is probably just on Facebook Messenger. I don't really, I try not to be found easily, but I'm there if you have questions or need help.
Why don't you own BrianAngel.com?
I think I think I tried at one point. There's somebody it's not a magician, that's Chris Angel, but there's somebody significant, like a pop star, that already has it. It's already taken. I think I can't get it anymore.
Look, I appreciate having you on. Thanks for sharing all of this. I know we're going to remain friends through all this, but it was awesome to be able to actually record this and talk through partnerships. So I appreciate you very, very much, buddy.
Yeah. Love you, man. Thanks for letting me get some of the stuff off my chest.
It's very easy in today's world to share all the wins and all the good things and Shopify screenshots and everything that's working. And not often enough, I don't think people are sharing this type of episode. I do hope you learn from Brian and I, and that, you got to keep grinding, and not everything's going to work. And while we did $1 million in sales, we only did 0 profit, right? And so Brian had to pivot. So kudos to Brian for pivoting into InMovement, pivoting into the treadmill desk. And even more kudos to him for him sitting back and realizing what he wants. I think if 2020 did anything for all of us, it was give us 2 seconds, a little bit of a breathing room, because we're at home, to say, what do we actually want? And for Brian, he wants to hop in that RV, and he wants to travel the country with his wife and his 2 kids and run the business. And that's not for me, and that's okay. Whatever you want in business, you can have it. You should be building the business that makes you happy, that gives you the life of your dreams. And I hope it's something you're passionate and authentic about as well, because that's only going to make it easier. So again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Reach out to Brian, give him some love. I'm sure this wasn't easy for him to share. I know he wanted to be on here. I appreciate him coming on. super excited for what's to come in the future. I've got Chase Diamond, who's got an e-commerce email marketing course that I want to talk to you about next week. I've got my friend Corey Warren, Lean Green Dad, coming on after that. I've got interviews scheduled with Ben Katzeman, Bill D'Alessandro, TC Poole, and many more. So I'm hoping a whole bunch of good episodes are coming your way over the next few weeks. I'm hoping you love them as much as I enjoy recording them. And yeah, make sure you leave a review. Please, please, please go leave a review on iTunes or Spotify and share this with a friend. I know you have business-minded friends that need to hear this. Share it with them. Tell them to listen. And if there's anything I can do to support you, the answer is yes. Just reach out, okay? Get on my email list. It's in the show notes. And let me know how I can support you.